Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Susan Coffin here today for Attitude Magazine's ADHD Experts broadcast. Today's topic's an interesting one, especially if you're the parent of an ADHD teen or young adult, one who may lack a clear sense of direction, and you may be wondering as the school year draws to a close, what's next and whether your child is ready for the predicted next steps, whatever they may be. One thing that you may want to consider, our speaker is going to tell us more about that today, is a gap year. Our speaker today will talk about how a gap year after high school offers a chance to pursue interests and consider opportunities and take stock of life. And in fact, an increasing number of colleges encourage their incoming freshmen to take this year to mature, to learn life skills, to find a direction, to clear their heads of school stress and experiment with independent living. We're very fortunate today to welcome John Willson as our guest. He's going to tell us about the advantages and the benefits of a gap year, what kind of life skills a teen can learn during a gap year, how to structure a gap year so it works for your teen, and how to choose from the many gap year programs out there, and they are numerous. John Willson, MS, let me introduce him, is the Executive Director of SOAR, S-O-A-R, which is a high-adventure summer camp, boarding school, and gap year program for youth and young adults with ADHD and other learning disabilities. John is the immediate past president of the Learning Disabilities Association of North Carolina and a national board member of CHADD, the National Attention Deficit Disorder Advocacy Organization. He has spent over 25 years working with youth and young adults diagnosed with ADHD and learning disabilities, and it's a huge resource to our community. Thank you so much for joining us today, John. We're very grateful for your time. We are so grateful to our sponsors. They allow Attitude to present all this information that we do every single week at no cost to anyone. And the sponsor of today's webinars is Landmark College. You may know Landmark College. It is a global leader in integrated teaching methods for students with learning differences such as ADHD, dyslexia, autism spectrum disorders, a variety of learning differences. Landmark College offers 2- and 4-year degree options, as well as summer programs for college students and high school students who learn differently. It's widely recognized for its innovative educational model and designed to help every student become confident, empowered, and independently successful learners. For more information, please check out Landmark's website, www.landmark.edu. So with that, let me turn it over to John, again with our thanks. I look forward to hearing this presentation. I'm the mother of a child who took a gap year to great benefit, so I'm a big believer. John, thank you for being here today.
It is my pleasure, and I am delighted that Attitude Magazine invited me to do the workshop. So I wanted to make sure that I touched on a couple important ingredients. The first is I wanted to educate folks as to what is and is not a gap year, certainly the potential benefits and some of the interesting trends that we're seeing in gap year programs. I wanted to help you create your own gap year, should you decide to do it independently, or if you wanted to use an existing program or educational consultants that specialize. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about what an adventure gap year program might look like in the fact that SOAR, has a high adventure-based adventure gap year that is specifically designed to meet the needs of youth diagnosed with ADHD and learning disabilities. So a gap year, it is a period of time in which students can take a break from formal education. And for some students, they desperately need that break. The break, they've been in a high-stress academic environment, and then going right back into another year, just emotionally, and it can be quite devastating. Or they may just simply not be ready. And with a lot of our children and young adults that are diagnosed with ADHD, we do tend to see that they are sometimes considerably less mature than their peers. But it's an opportunity for individuals to travel, to volunteer, to study. There can be internships and work, perform certain research, or a different combination of these activities. What you'll note about all those is they have tremendous purpose. I'll tell you what a gap year is not. It is not an extended break to hang out, to play video games, to hit the European party circuit, to lounge on the couch all year, or to sit passively by and wait for something to happen. Some of the tremendous advantages of a gap year program They help kids, these young adults, clarify their career interests and goals, and so they create some clarity. They help individuals develop organizational life skills that either may be lacking or may just need some significant honing. A gap year can help renew passion for academic coursework and learning that has been lost during the course of senioritis, and kind of renewed vigor for the tremendous opportunities that come with being in an academic and a learning environment. It gives you a sense to gain a sense of maturity and self-confidence. It also provides young adults with a chance to discover interests and passions that they may not have even been aware of prior to committing to whatever that next step is going to be. It certainly has a chance to broaden perspectives and provide individuals, if travel was a component of the gap year, what other cultures are dealing with, and giving these young men and women a more global view, a more global awareness of life. And finally, it really does improve job prospects with employers seeking graduates with practical experience, because you didn't just come out of high school and go right into college. You have this year where you've lived, you've done something extraordinary. And experience very much is the essence and the fabric that makes up the tapestry of life, right? So is a gap year the right thing for somebody with ADHD? And certainly, young adults with ADHD, they tend to be somewhat impulsive and reactive. They also seem easily distracted. And I'm guessing that some of you recognize these traits as you've signed on for this. There seems to be some disorganization and difficulty completing tasks. And then, as I mentioned previously, they can be up to a third chronologically less mature than their peers. All right, so does that person sound ready for college? Impulsive, reactive, easily distracted, disorganized, have difficulty completing tasks, and less mature than your peers. And I would say that very often that this person needs another potential year of seasoning, of maturity, of growth through an enriched experience. And so, perhaps a gap year can be tremendous. There's a wonderful research that we found years ago at SOAR that was done out of the Frostig Center, and it's called Life Success Attributes. And what it tried to find was what are the attributes that successful adults that are diagnosed with attentional challenges and learning disabilities that are successful, and could those be predictors of success? Well, here they are. It's almost a roadmap to success, and they include self-awareness. They include being able to be proactive. They include perseverance. They include goal setting. They include the ability to utilize effective support systems and learning how to emotionally cope. Now, as you look at all of these areas, self-awareness, proactivity, perseverance, goal setting, support systems, and emotional coping, this is just in the absolute wheelhouse of what a gap year can provide. You see, gap years have an opportunity to help create self-awareness, to help develop confidence, to help give individuals a strong sense of personal responsibility, certainly through the experiences and the transitions and the opportunities that they encounter. They're going to see heightened resilience. You're going to see an increased level of maturity through the adventures and the growth experiences that they have. And then given this year of self-reflection and understanding and sort of investing in something greater than yourself, individuals get a better understanding of what is really important to them, what motivates them, what drives them, what are they passionate about. And ultimately, it allows these individuals, these young adults, to help develop a plan to move forward. Now, as you think about those life success attributes, and you think about what a gap year is designed to do, you see how well that they marry. And so I believe that a gap year for individuals with ADHD can be a tremendous opportunity. Now, it can be right for this population if the gap year has structure, if it is adventurous, if it is goal-oriented, if it is well-planned and thought out, and if it moves with an eye towards what next. See, these ingredients have to be in place, or potentially you end up with backtracking. You want to make sure that there's structure, that you create and have goals and objectives, that the year that you plan is well thought out, that it isn't just flying by the seat of your pants, and that all of it has a focus and an eye towards what is going to be next. And so what is going to be next? For some students, college is what's next. For other, college is not for everybody. And so opportunities in life might abound. But what direction is that going to take? What might that look like? And so I thought I would break it down. I would do a life bound and college bound. So a gap year for individuals that are college bound, you resolve academic burnout. And Susan was talking about how burned out her daughter was after she finished high school, and that is not the best or right mindset to go into a college experience. And so that academic burnout is resolved. You have an opportunity to ignite curiosity, and with that curiosity ignited comes passion for learning again. You have the opportunity to explore tremendous opportunities and possibilities that open doors that you did not realize potentially. Have a chance to experience otherwise. It gives folks a chance to really gain some tremendous clarity as to what it is that matters to them, what they want to do, what their next purpose is, and then as that all bleeds to going to college with a purpose, going to college with a drive, going to college to achieve something kind of extraordinary. Benefits for Lifebound. And what we find is that if you're doing a gap year that has a interesting cultural opportunity, you gain cultural understanding, which leads to stretching. And anytime we stretch and we develop opportunities for us to learn more about ourselves, that's how growth happens. Growth doesn't happen in a passive environment. It only happens when we are pushed and stretched a little bit. And so that stretching creates growth. Certainly through that stretching, we come to understand what do we really value? What are the clarifying values that govern and structure the fabric of our life? Then we also have a chance to develop coping skills that are going to help lay the foundation for different problem solving and opportunities that we see in life. Because as we know, in life, you're dealing with a series of challenges and a series of opportunities where you have to navigate interesting pitfalls and valleys and peaks to get to your goal. Certainly, learning how to communicate both with people of other cultures and also within other people that are experiencing this gap year with you, and learning how to communicate, and that communication is a critical part of that problem-solving process. And then, as you're owning this experience, as you are owning this adventure and owning the choices that you want to make, and starting to see and get clarity as to the direction that you're going to go, then that creates maturity. Maturity through experience is one of the things that a young person coming out of high school with ADHD is going to benefit the most from. It happens naturally because you've got another year of maturity, but this is maturation on steroids. This is maturation that is in a purposeful, guided way that is promoting some of those really critical, important life skills, those life success attributes that I talked about earlier. All right, so let's say that you are really invested in this idea here, and you want to look at how could I do this for myself? How could I structure a gap year or have my teen put together a gap year for themselves? And so you're going to combine these four essential things. All right, are you going to add a travel component to the gap year? And those travels could include foreign, it could include domestic travel, it could include travel that is just within 3 hours of your home. But again, kind of stretching and getting out of that comfort zone. Are you going to include a work or internship opportunity? And there are certainly local opportunities that might be available to individuals coming out of high school that could be helpful. There are also organizations like internshipprograms.com and goabroad.com that can help you find different work and internship opportunities. Volunteer opportunities. Martin Luther King said it doesn't take a college education to serve or money to serve. It just takes a heart filled with grace and so provided an opportunity to volunteer can be tremendous. Every self-help book that has ever been written has one fundamental component ingredient that really kind of ties them together, and that is that to find true success and happiness, you have to live for something bigger than yourself. And so learning how to volunteer and be a part of your larger community can be such a critical and important part of becoming that young adult that you want to be. So potentially an animal shelter can be a place where they can volunteer. Youth organizations are always looking for help volunteering, and that also looks great on a resume. And then, of course, Habitat for Humanity. And then there are these mini courses that you can take, and I'm going to give you some examples of things to sort of jog your brain and help come up with what that might look like. But you've got scuba certification. Get a scuba certification or advanced scuba certification, or you can even get a rescue scuba diver certification. You've got advanced medical training. Whether it's getting a first aid and CPR or advanced first aid, or for individuals that might be interested in being outdoors, a wilderness first responder, or even an EMT. And so there's really interesting opportunities for young people there. And then there are all kinds of how-to courses: how to do woodworking, how to work on a car, how to change your oil, how to do personal finance. And so at the local community college, perhaps they take a course, or they you find something online that piques an interest, and you combine the travel and the opportunity to learn how to do some of these things. And so when you put that together, you could structure a gap year on your own by yourself that might kind of have some of these opportunities available to the student. I will tell you that the more your teen, your young adult, does this themselves, the more powerful this becomes, because that structuring the gap year becomes part of the dynamic. However, that being said, there are tremendous programs out there that do work with this population. A trend that started in Europe and has really gained some real traction here in the United States is the idea of these gap years. And so there are some really tremendous gap year programs in this country. Judy Bass with Educational Services, Holly Bull, by many considered the preeminent expert on the different programs in the nation. Contact her. Dory Francis with Horizon Family Solutions. And then there are two websites that I gained a lot of information from: USA Gap Year Fairs, and there are camp fairs, U.S. Gap fairs that they host in different cities, and so you can go and many of the gap year programs that are operating in this country are going to be there, and you can have quick little conversations and start to see similarities and differences in the different programs. And then a lot of the research I used to put together this workshop came from AmericanGap.org, and they are a wealth of information regarding gap year programs and current research opportunities. So what are some of the programs? Well, I've chosen to just give you a quick blurb about four. Dynamy Internship is a great residential internship program. They offer individuals 17 to 22 a semester opportunity to do an internship and again a program with very strong reputation. Another program that I've heard good things about is Rustic Pathways. They include community service, experiential education, and international adventures for young adults, and it can be a very powerful program. One of the most well-known and probably most famous in this country is a program called Where There Be Dragons, and it is really focused in 17 different countries, Europe, Central, South America, and they do summer and semester programs for high school and college students. And their focus is cultivate global citizenship, leadership, and self-awareness. And then the last one is the program that I host here at SOAR, which is called Gap Year at SOAR. And to my knowledge, and again, I asked several of the educational consultants, but we are the only Gap Year program specifically designed to meet the needs of young adults diagnosed with ADHD, young men and women. The program also is different because it includes both a residential component and an adventure travel component. And an international component, which are some of the mixes that they have, along with an opportunity to take some college courses. Susan mentioned that there are some programs that some schools that kind of actually encourage you to consider a gap year. If you receive an application from or an acceptance from Harvard, in the acceptance letter it reads, "You're welcome to Harvard. Now consider taking a gap year." And I've also seen some really interesting research out of UNC that indicates that individuals with that take advantage of a gap year experience are more likely than students who do not take a gap year to graduate in 4 years, tend to have a higher GPA, and move into leadership situations on campus more quickly than individuals who don't take a gap year. And when you think about it, that makes a ton of sense, because you've got freshmen coming in. And imagine a freshman who's just finished high school and jumped right into college versus a freshman who has taken a year to become a global citizen, to become someone who has really kind of honed and learned specifically more about themselves and how they approach the world and what matters to them. And they're more seasoned. They're ready to take on the rigors of college in a more purposeful way. Now, some of the major components of our program, which is again an adventure-based ADHD program, we focus on life skills, on expeditions, adventure expeditions, we do college coursework, and then we include community involvement and volunteerism. Again, many of the components that I indicated earlier that are critical to that process. Focusing on day-to-day life skills, executive functioning, organization, time management, personal maintenance, and social interactions, all, again, trying to develop and strengthen those critical executive functioning skills. We also see life skill development, and there are certain ingredients to just being an adult that we have to learn by experience, but we're guiding that experience. Social media insight, basic vehicle maintenance, cooking and nutrition, and how to manage and maintain, how to resolve conflicts with your peers when you don't agree about something, or you find yourself in an awkward situation and now you're adults and there's not another adult who's going to mediate that circumstance. How to do fiscal management, how to pay your bills, how to manage things, and then personal hygiene. And again, personal hygiene is not just making sure that you shower every day, but it's also what kind of sleep hygiene are you keeping? How are you making sure that you are physically primed to be the optimal best you that you can be? And those are all really important ingredients that when you reflectively have an opportunity to take a look at, they become life-changing mechanisms. Again, community involvement, volunteering at local things that matter to them. If I've got somebody who's interested in learning cooking, or what that might look like, the food service industry, we're going to try and pair them with somebody in the community that is doing that kind of work. And it gives these young people an opportunity for social interaction, gaining new skills, and again, exploring those potential career interests that might help guide and nurture some of the choices that they make once they either go to college or move on from there. In our program, again, we contacted Central Wyoming College, the local community college, and we had them create curriculum for our students specifically that would allow them to do some college coursework and practice, and so give them a chance of what college feels like. Professors working directly with our gap year students, and then learning about available resources. And for instance, some of the classes that our students take is personal finance, how to take a college class, and then leadership in the workplace. And then again, in a year, they'll obtain 4 transferable college credits. It's not a great deal of college, but it's an opportunity to kind of, straddle both those worlds, the adventure expedition world and the college world. Again, the expeditions are a critical part of what we do. The Gappers are involved in route planning. They do food buys. They work together to set schedules and distribute gear and work together as a team. They're part of the reservations. They work with the park rangers and then potentially activity locations and looking for different and unique opportunities, which also puts them in control of the budget. They determine what activities that they'll do throughout these expeditions, and then also on one of the expeditions they will visit another college campus and see what residential college life might look like. And then some of the potential destinations and activities that we do: the Grand Canyon, Oregon Coast, Redwood National Forest, Glacier National Park, Arches in Moab. And again, we typically will take the students to either Belize or Costa Rica for an international trip. And then you can see here some of the different and exciting adventure opportunities that abound. And Gap Year SOAR made the choice to use adventure activities as an opportunity to experience transition and problem-solving opportunities in a way that excited kids and young adults and got them invested in looking at what life has to offer. And so we see the terrific opportunity to kind of learn while doing some of these extraordinary things like sea kayaking or rock climbing or rappelling, and then transfer those skills that they've learned doing these activities to home and school and work and life settings that allow them to learn in an adventure setting, but then transfer that learning into their real life experiences. And so the result of that, well, the result is you develop a increased self-awareness, you develop the ability to problem solve, you create direction and plan for your life, and you grow and you mature. And that's the crux of it. You grow and you mature. And those opportunities are just extraordinary when it comes to looking at how you might choose that year after college for a young person that would give them the best chance at having success after that gap year. This ends my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, John. That was really fascinating. Let me just, there's questions here. A number of parents, I think, are listening in because they feel that a gap year would be great for their child. And what a number of them are asking is, here's a quote from Marnie: "How do I kindly convince my son that a gap year is exactly what he needs? He sees it as a failure." Another person, Nancy, says, "My son is highly anxious, resistant to moving out of comfort zone. He's got a stigma, fear of being different, and feels like needing a gap year would be some sort of a failure." So, in dealing with ADHD kids who oftentimes do have confidence issues, anyway, what advice do you have for parents in terms of bringing up the question, the prospect of a gap year and getting their child on board with this idea?
Okay, so there's a couple different parts to that question, but I think it's incredibly important to help note that you are dealing with adults, and so at this point you want to treat them as adults, and on some level they have choices. Now, where you control the choice is what you're willing to pay for, and so, or what you're willing to accept. Can they stay in the home? Are you willing to just let them languish for a year? Are you willing to experimentally pay for a year of college? And so the first thing that a parent needs to do is they need to find for themselves what their options are, what they're willing and looking at being able to do. And so once you've created those parameters for yourself, now you're prepared to have that conversation with your child. And again, I think a really compelling argument is some of the research that I indicated. Harvard, you get, individuals get accepted to Harvard, and rather than using gap year as a failure, they're saying, "Hey, listen, you're in. You get to come. Would you consider taking a gap year before you get here?" And why would they do that? Well, the reason they do that is they recognize that the research shows that you are more likely to graduate in 4 years if you take a gap year than if you don't. And so many students are taking 4, 5, or 5, 6, sometimes up to 8 years to graduate from college, and and part of that is they just lack direction, and so you know, setting you on your best foot forward can be just tremendous. But here's perhaps the 18-year-old version of me. This is the argument that's going to be the most compelling for me. I won't have this opportunity. You know, when I graduate from college, I'm going to be expected to get into the workplace, and so when would I have a chance to go and explore and have an adventure like this one? I won't. And so, as a as you know, framed in the idea of what a tremendous opportunity it is to explore the world and really find tremendous opportunities that help make you the person that you want to be, then that the timing of that is just so critical. For the young man who believes that this is really an example of his failure, then you know the truth is that it's the opposite that is true. It's because he was successful getting through high school. This is the cherry. This is the dessert. This is the reward before he has to then sit down and embark on the meal again.
You know, in your Harvard example, which I think is really helpful, brings up the question that a number of parents have asked: how do you reconcile taking a gap year with college admission? People are asking, you know, do you apply to college in high school and defer? Do you wait and apply during the gap year? What have you seen, and what seems to work well for children? I'll just offer in my own daughter's case. She applied to college with all of her peers, was accepted, and then chose to defer for a year, which the college was happy to grant. So her gap year was spent not worrying about getting into college, which had been a huge concern during senior year. But in general, what do you see, John, in terms of the application process to college for kids who take a gap year?
What I have seen is that most colleges, again, not all, but most colleges are happy to defer, and because you know college campuses are recognizing they want mature students. They want students that are going to get there and not bomb out their first year. And so most colleges will defer the enrollment, which means that you've got a guaranteed spot next year. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and apply to colleges, and then seek that deferral, because your options are still open. Because now what you can do is you're not bound to that college. That college is guaranteed you a spot, but you're not bound to go there. If in your year you decide that your life is really going to take a very different direction and perhaps you want to try a different college, well, now you can make another application. And rather than limit your opportunities, it actually expands them. And I'll tell you another thing that I've heard some colleges mention is that, you know, when they see gap year on a resume, it piques their interest. They know that they're getting somebody who's a little more well-rounded and has some of those critical life experiences that make them a better prospect for college admission. And so, you know, a gap year may help you get the college that you didn't get into prior to, but will make that more possible. So deferrals are typically accepted, and then make choices in that next year based on what you want to do and where you want to go. And I'll say one more thing. You know, in all the interviews that I've read online and all the interviews that I've done personally, I have not come across one single person who said, "I wish I had gone straight to college. Taking a gap year was a great mistake." What you hear most people say, or what they all are saying, is, "It was the greatest choice I've made as a young person." And you know, Holly Bull, one of the educational consultants that I mentioned earlier, again, you know, she took a gap year herself and credits much of her life success to that experience.
We have someone on the webinar, Kathy, who posted that gap year is the best thing I've ever done for my son. At this time last year, he was having night terrors about going to college, and now he can't wait to go to college. It worked, she says. So it was an interesting testimony. How about, John, the idea of taking a gap year after freshman year. There are several people, one specific person here, Ethan Knight, who says, Ethan Knight here from the AGA, just to offer that a student can take a gap year after their first year of college. I learned that college wasn't right for me and was more open to a gap year at that point. Another parent says, my son did not want to take a gap year, but his first year of college has not gone well. He hasn't been asked to leave, but it's close. He's very bright and he has a great scholarship, but and we're concerned about keeping that scholarship, but clearly taking a gap year now would be a good idea. So two questions there, I guess, taking a gap year after a first year of college and the issue of hanging on to scholarships, which I think is certainly a concern for many families.
Okay, well, I can speak to the first and not to the second.
Okay.
The first part of that question is if college is not going well and they're either on academic probation or you see the writing on the wall, then it is not too late to do a gap year after your freshman year. It just isn't. And point of fact, we've worked with several students at SOAR in that exact capacity. We had a young man a couple years ago who had washed out of Notre Dame, and they gave him some opportunities. Taking a gap year was one of them that would allow him to be reinstated. So he came to us after his first year of college at Notre Dame, and then was welcomed back to Notre Dame with open arms. Only in the course of that year, he discovered that he really wanted his life to go in a very different direction. And he ended up applying to a different college for an entirely different course of study and graduated within 3 years after coming back and experienced just tremendous growth. And so I certainly understand and support doing that. I unfortunately do not know what happens to scholarships if you choose to defer your attendance and take a gap year after your first year of college.
I would imagine that that's something you discuss and negotiate with the college. I'm sure there's probably no standard answer to that question. Yeah. But I think you're right. The gap year does afford the opportunity to rethink college plans. My daughter, who took a gap year before college, was with the number of students who had dropped out, didn't like their first year of college, stopped, took this gap year, and rethought what they were doing, where they were going, what they wanted to do, and took that, that opportunity to rethink that. I think it's not uncommon to do that after a year or two. Marissa, a couple questions relating to taking the time off in terms of its academic impact. So Marissa asked, don't kids find it difficult to focus after a gap year? Someone else asks, won't they lose some of the skills, math and other skills that they had gained during high school? What's your experience with that? Your advice on that, John?
Well, common sense would tell you that would occur, but again, the research is pretty definitive and indicates that in fact the opposite is true. That students are not less likely to not go back to college if they wait a year. That if they wait a year and do something productive during that year that is growth focused, that they in fact are very likely to go back to school. And then secondly, that opportunity to become academically invigorated again more than makes up for some of the lost skills and opportunities in some of those core subjects. When you go to college and you're taking some of your prerequisites, the first part of those courses are very often incorporate review to make sure that everybody's up to speed and at the same level. And so when you are academically motivated and your brain is fresh and you are recharged and ready to go, then that can be a very productive and positive experience. What I think is it's much more likely that you're going to go into your first year of college, struggle, potentially fail, and then either not ever go back or have that be a long drawn out process. That is more likely than if you choose to do a purposeful gap year and then at that point decide, yes, you're not going to college. I think that is less likely to happen, that you're more likely to actually then go to college, unless during that gap year you realize that maybe college wasn't the thing that you want to do, and instead you work towards a very different focused life plan. But that's the key word there, isn't it? Focused life plan. And you're not just sort of aimlessly letting, the river of life push you down the stream without having some control as to where you want to get out and what branches you want to take.
Question here from Anne. In your experience, do students have a better experience if they go away from home, as opposed to, I think some people are looking at community service options or other options in the community, partly for budget reasons and also because perhaps their children are averse to risk-taking or not ready for really risk-taking. What's your feeling on gap year from home versus gap year away from home?
I'm so glad that question has been asked, because I meant to tackle that earlier. I'm going to answer the second part of that question first. Individuals that are anxious or averse to risk-taking or sort of transitioning to a different and new environment, I want to say that if that doesn't happen in a guided, nurtured opportunity, then where do they learn those skills? When do they learn those skills? You cannot work through life and be successful if you can't manage or handle adversity or the circumstances. And it is human nature to find yourself in a setting and be like, oh my God, what did I do? I've made a terrible mistake. I desperately need to get home. That is human nature. We all do it. And then we have to push through those emotions and those feelings and persevere to the next moment where we start to experience and realize some comfort. But that is difficult, and it's difficult for parents to allow their children to experience that, because parents want to rescue their kids and make sure that they're not in that terribly uncomfortable setting. But I will tell you that when I finally did go to college, I wondered if I had made this terrible mistake, and I felt very, very uncomfortable. But persevering and pushing through that is what allowed me to have some of the skills to manage the pitfalls and the ups and downs of my life. The second part of that question was, I believe that if you're really looking at a gap year, the more varied the experience can be, and the more opportunities that these young people can experience some measure of independence and out from under mom and dad, the more effective and more powerful that experience is going to be. And so, again, I'm a huge fan of some international travel. I think that seeing the world from a different perspective is so enlightening and so powerful. And so I think that you can stitch together a gap year that for, if you're doing it on a budget, that is economic, and you incorporate some components where you're at home. But I would certainly encourage some diversity in that experience, and making sure that they had opportunities to get out from under, if in fact going to college away from mom and dad the next year was going to be part of the equation.
Just Stacy chimed in to say, I'm an adult who took a semester off from college because I wasn't doing well. And when I went back, I was much more ready to learn, and it showed in my grades. I knew I just wasn't ready. I ended up going on and getting my master's degree. So she's speaking to the question of whether or not you would lose academic prowess by taking the year off, and confirming that, at least for her. It does not do that. Let me just speak to my personal experience on the question of kids who were risk averse, and my daughter was in that category. I think she felt scared about going to college and being on her own. So obviously we needed a gap year experience that would be somewhere between living at home and being fully on your own in college. And we actually found a quite reasonably priced experience that was quite structured abroad. She lived with a family. It had an academic component. She felt comfortable doing that, and yet it was a big stretch for her. So I think, if you have a child who is risk averse and hesitant to step out, you need to factor that into the kind of gap year options that you come up with. And they're just, as John said, there are so many gap year options out there. It's extraordinary, really. It's just so many different kinds of options. So, question from Elena, which is an interesting one. Given the time and effort it takes to create a good gap year program, how far in advance should we start planning? And for some people, they say their children are so academically stressed that they can't even think about it until the school year and the senior year ends.
I would say that if you're going to design and plan and implement your own gap year experience, I'd say the midterm of your junior year would be the latest that you would want to get started.
Okay.
Because again, if you're going to plan that ought to be a collaborative effort between the parents and the high school student. And I would attend some USA Gap fairs if they come to one local in your area, so that you can get some flavor and some ideas. But you're doing research, you're looking at opportunities, you're stitching that together, rather than trying to put it all together at the last minute.
Right. Eleanor says, my surprise in researching GAP programs were the costs. So I'm going to turn to the cost issue here, which is significant for many parents, a concern for many parents. And she says, I would encourage attending a gap year fair, and know that there are also options that provide work experience. So that can provide a way to fund the gap year experience as well. So is that your sense also, John? That there are ways for kids to work and earn some money during the gap year?
There are some programs that create work opportunities where individuals can work during their gap year. The gap year soars on the higher end of cost, and in large part because we're specifically focused on this population, and so our constructs and our structure is a little more sophisticated. Some of the gap years, essentially you're paying for the travel, and you're paying the individuals to kind of be brokers of the experience, but they're not really specifically focusing on the emotional growth dynamic of your child. And so, depending on what your needs are for your high school student, really is going to depend on what you end up having to spend to do the gap year experience. Right, just prior to the webinar, Susan and I were talking that that from a cost savings perspective, for many of parents, the cost of college, most kids are not graduating 4 years of college. And so potentially by actually hosting a healthy gap year experience, you are creating, that fifth year, because students will graduate in 4 years rather than have that drawn out for 6 or 7. And so there could be, some of that cost savings associated with making sure that your son or daughter is really ready to hit college running. I think. But back to the work experience. A lot of the gap years that operate are really focused on travel, and those do not have as many work opportunities associated with them. But programs like Dynamite, I think you can do internship and potentially a work study program through experiences that are more residential in nature.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think it all depends on sort of the level of supervision your child needs or feels comfortable with. Christine asks, how much supervision do gap year programs tend to provide? This is my biggest concern. My son's not ready to live on his own in college. How ready does he have to be to participate in a gap year program?
Well, and again, I just spent some time answering that very situation. You've got some programs that are going to offer more structure than others. Mm-hmm. You have some that are going to have a sort of a mentor, and then you've got programs like mine that are really focused on the emotional growth and the life skill development of students. So it is a continuum. But the more support you're going to get, the more expensive the program is going to be. Okay.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Ethan, who has been posting and just had to check out, posted that increasingly students are able to gain access to financial aid and FAFSA for their gap years, either through their colleges or otherwise. Last year, we have data showing that almost $3 million is given out by private programs. So you have to ask what kind of scholarships are available for the gap year programs that you're interested in. And going back to the, Norma, I've often thought I would have benefited from enlisting in the National Guard or even the Army instead of entering college early. Is that a good option for today's ADHD kids, or might it be too extreme? That's an interesting question.
And I will answer that because it really depends on the individual. So the answer is, will your son or daughter benefit from that kind of, and again, oppressive structure? And that may, I don't mean that in any kind of an insulting way, but, but told when to eat, where to pee, when to poop, is your son or daughter going to benefit from that kind of an environment? Or will that environment really thwart the essence of who they are? And so we have had some students graduate from our academy and go on into the military and have great success. And then we've had some students finish the academy at SOAR and then, try enter the military and that not have been nearly as successful an experience. And so it is not a one-size-fits-all.
Right. Here's a question which I think is going to also be not a one-size-fits-all. What's the average cost of a gap year?
Yeah, my findings are that you're typically going to range between $15,000 to $50,000 for a structured gap year opportunity, and so that's kind of the range. 25 is average. Again, SOAR on the high end, and then programs that offer just basically travel and some structure at the lower end.
Right. We certainly spent considerably less than that for my daughter's program, which was 1 semester only, and abroad living with a family. She then worked the second semester, so all in all, she had the year, but she did a variety of things, but the cost was considerably lower. So I think that's another way that you can piece this together is something like that. Let's see. Mary is very anxious to know whether you recommend that two friends take their gap year together. Or should they each do separate adventures? I'm going to guess that she's thinking the answer is separate adventures.
Well, again, I think that might make the experience more comfortable initially. It would be interesting to see what happened with that friendship. But the real answer to that isn't so much in the yes or no as it is in this. Will having that person along with you increase the opportunity for this to be a potent, powerful experience, or is there the chance that relationship will act as sort of a safety blanket that might preclude the growth that you really want to see in that opportunity? And it really is based on what the nature of that relationship is. Do they push each other and encourage each other, or are they each other's safety blanket?
Right, absolutely. It depends. I'm sure you're right. That depends on the relationship between the two, right? Because part of the whole experience of the gap year is striking out on your own, making new friends, and just a very different experience. Interesting question here about, quote, a gap year between college and graduate school. I just want to say that my second daughter actually joined AmeriCorps for a year after college, and it served very much like the gap year that my first daughter took between college and high school and college, in that AmeriCorps was very structured, all new people, living on our own, cooking, driving, all the things that really hadn't happened in a protected college experience. So I'll just offer that experience to say that I felt like that was almost like a gap year, only it was after college and before work. John, I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but it's never too late to try to get those kind of life skills.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I've had several folks that I know do 2 years in the Peace Corps after college, and then go back and get their master's degree or go on to get a law degree. It just depends on where you are. If you hit academic burnout and then turning around and going right back into graduate school just is not a good idea. And again, a year of work experience,
Right.
Doing something remarkable. And there's there are some really unique jobs out there that you can do for a year that are quite extraordinary, that that will act kind of as their own little independent gap year. You could find yourself maintaining a research facility on some tropical island somewhere doing data on sea turtles. You could find yourself, you could find yourself, hiking the Appalachian Trail with a group of kids. If you've got some good experience working with youth, you could find yourself in all kinds of unique and opportunistic settings that, again, might help you gain some clarity as to what your next step would be.
Absolutely. Just being out in the world is all it is all about. John, thank you so much for this very helpful presentation. Is there anything you want to add about the SOAR program that the listeners should know? Some of the things that people might be interested in hearing are deadlines for application.
Sure. Well, our gap year program has a couple of different interesting components. We serve between 10 and 12 first-year students, and then there is an eligibility for some students to do a second gap year that really is more of a work-study focused opportunity, along with some of those remarkable adventure travel experiences. Again, one of the things that makes us so unique is one, we're really one of the only gap adventure or gap year programs that is specifically focused on working with this population. But the other is that, there are gap year programs that do adventure travel, and then there are gap years that provide work-study programs, and then there are gap years or PG programs, postgraduate programs that will help you do a first year of college. And the Gap Year SOAR is one of the very few programs I found that really has combined all three into a manageable way. So you're learning the skills to live in an independent resident situation, working with other people, managing the day-to-day tasks of living independently, as well as the opportunity to learn and grow through extraordinary adventures, and then have a chance to dabble with college and community involvement that helps you sort of figure out what the next path is going to be.
There's such great opportunities out there today. I mean, we're so fortunate for our kids, and I want to thank John and SOAR for their programs, and also give a shout out again to our sponsor, Landmark College. Very innovative educational model for kids with learning differences. So thank all of you. John, thank you so much for all the work that you do. It's and this webinar, I think it was an eye-opener.
It was my pleasure.
For everyone, and I'm going to give a big supportive vote to with the work John does and to gap years in general for kids. Thanks again, everyone. Signing off.
For more Attitude Podcast and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.